The volume's too loud? Really? That's new. That's new. Okay. All right. So, what do you want to talk about tonight? What would you like to cover tonight? Any topics that you would like to talk about? Anybody has anything going on that they want to talk about? Sam, I went to see my long-term broker and he advised me to, instead of buying and holding, he recommended to be a private lender. Yeah, you could do that. Absolutely, Frank. You could be a lender. Um, I assume he's a broker that deals with private lending. Is that right? He suggested to lend him 50K from my RSP. Okay, what kind of return was he saying he could get you, Frank? And I will get 12% return. That's pretty good. That's good. That's decent return for sure. Secured with real estate, I'm sure, right? Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, you got to go deal by deal, Frank, and you want to make sure you vet the deal yourself. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's something you can do for sure. Is use funding um, out of your RSP for that. What should I ask him to secure things on my side to reduce my risk? Really, it comes down to the property itself and the amount of equity you're lending to. So loan to value. So let me give you an example. Let's see. Okay, so if a property was 100K and let's say there was a first mortgage at 60K and they were asking you to be the second mortgage at 20K. The total to this is 80% LTV. You see that? So that's something I would want to know, obviously, and I'm sure he would let you know that. But if you're 80% loan to value and you're getting 12%, that's great. I think if I was between 80 and 90, I would want, say, 14 to 16. If I was, 95, maybe I'd want 18 to 24. Okay? Can anybody tell me why? Loan to value. LTV is loan to value. So why would I want more return as I go up? Yeah, it's just higher risk because the market can reverse, right? The value of the property, and it could become more loan than actual value in the house, right? So it's upside down is what they call it. You have a bigger loan than the value of the property. So that being said, I mean, if you're 80%, you're basically in a good position, 80 or lower. Once you break 80, I would want a higher return. I would assume Frank he's talking about second mortgages at that rate, 12%. But you'd want to ask him that. Now again, if you're in second position, you're going to be the one that gets paid second. So in a mortgage, so we have first position gets paid first. Okay, second position paid second, and so on, right? To 10th position, whatever it is. I mean, whatever position you're in, that's the order of who gets paid out first on the property, and I would want to know what position I was in and the loan to value. So position and loan to value are the two questions I want to know, Frank. For sure. And I'd also, if it was an investor, if it's an end user, they would go through the same vetting process that they would at a bank for getting a loan from you. And also, if it was an investor, I'd want to make sure that the investor's property was actually profitable. I'd want to see the numbers on it to make sure that they're actually making money. Because if the end user, and we're talking about an investor in this case, the investor is not making money, I'd be concerned about me getting my money back if it was a flip or something like that, an investment property. Obviously, the security of the property is key, and if you're lending to being a second position lender under 80 or lower, you're in pretty good position. But I mean, you'd have to examine that deal by deal. Any questions on that? Yeah, for a single family home end user, yeah, sure, why not? Yeah. And Frank, why don't you also ask him, considering he's asking you to be a lender, what about lenders that he has for your own investments, right? So what is he saying, that he would charge you 12% for private money? So first position lender, when you're designated as a first position lender, and if the property is pushed into foreclosure, you get paid first. Or if the property is sold, you get paid first. A second position, you get paid second. Does that make sense, Jane? Just means when you get paid. That's all it means. Who gets paid first? Yeah, it just means who gets paid first. I will get 12% for private money, so about $500 a month for 50K. Well, it would depend on the amortization, Frank. How long the loan was. If it was interest only, things like that. Yeah, Kurt, I'd want to, depending on the position, could interest be different? Yep. If you're in a lower position, you'd want a higher return because you're taking more risk. Does that make sense? Yeah. I've been asked the following. Total lending annual ROI is 10%, structured as a 3-year open mortgage with a 5% interest rate and a 15% lending fee on the front, which would come out as cash. So someone's telling you they will borrow money from you at 10% return, a 3% open mortgage. What does that mean? Are they saying against the interest rate, the bank interest rate? Because if it's open, is that a fixed rate of 10%? Is that right? 3-year open mortgage with a 5% interest rate. What does that mean? If it's open mortgage, like a variable rate, is that what you're saying? I've been asked the following. Total lending annual return is 10%, structured as a 3-year open mortgage with a 5% interest rate and a 15% lending fee on the front, which would come out as cash. Up front, is that what they're saying? Up front? So if you lent $100,000, they would give you $15,000. Well, you would only give them 85, right? Is that right? You'd only give 85, right? Okay. All right. So basically you would only give them 26,500. Or sorry, 25,500, correct? That's what they're asking for? So just want to make a quick point here. Obviously, any loans, any documents, any contracts, any agreements must be vetted or reviewed by our lawyers. Not vetted, but reviewed by our lawyers, right? We vet the deal, but our lawyers, vet the contracts. They review the contracts to ensure that the people that we're dealing with, that we're protected. More specifically, that we know the risk that we're in. So 30,000 cash back at drawing up the mortgage for the 30,000. So Keith, you'd be only giving them you'd only really be giving them 25,500, correct? Does that make sense? Same thing, I suppose. Yeah, same thing. Now the 10% return looks like it's 5% a year, which would be the term, 3-year term. I don't know why they're saying open mortgage. Why did they say open mortgage? Do they mean they want to be able to All right, I want to find out if it's a closed, if that's the term. Because it looks like they're giving you 15% plus 5% a year, meaning that you're going to get a 10% ROI. Now, it's not exactly a 10% ROI unless it's an interest-only loan. Does that make sense, Keith? Because if they were paying any principal, it wouldn't exactly be 10 to. Okay, so let me give you an example. So this side's going to represent what we get. We get 4,500 initially, right? And then that leaves, well, it would be a 30K loan, amortized for how long? How long would it be? Would it be a 30-year loan, 5-year loan? You know? You get 30 at the end. Uh, hmm. Okay. Um, 30 back plus the interest plus interest. So no, there's no payments in between, correct? Sorry, I lost you there for a sec. Sorry about that. I'm back. Okay. Everybody can hear me okay? Okay. So the loan that we're talking about is basically they're paying you 10% return. Do they give you a net amount at the end? Okay, so they're basically saying that you're going to get 4,500 up front plus 4,500. 4,500 in interest. That's what they're saying. They're saying that you're going to get 9K at the end. Yes. Okay. So the loan itself, you know, they're structuring it. where it's basically an interest-only loan, right? You're only going to get paid. You're going to get paid it at the end. There's no payments though, and the amount's paid at the end of the term. So, what's the purpose of the loan, Keith? Do they tell you? Is on a single-family home? Is that right? Completely funded by construction. For construction. Okay. Couple things. Okay. So there's not a structure there, correct? So there's no security. They're building a fourplex. There's no security on this then. So there's nothing securing this loan, correct? What do you folks think about an unsecured loan? It is secured under the builder's private house. Okay. All right. So it's secured under the builder's private house. Okay. And what do they, so now we have to look at the house, right? How many loans are against the house? How much equity is in the house? So really it's not we can basically you're giving him a second mortgage on his house. He can do whatever he wants with the money. Because the lien's going to be registered against his house. Do you see what I'm saying, Keith? Okay, so now we got to ask the question. We're back to what Frank was talking about with we were talking initially about the property. What's the loan to value? How much equity is in the house on that property? Because that would really tell us how secure we are. No idea yet. Okay, well those are the questions you got to ask. How many loans are in it? Like what position will you be in? Will you be in first position, second position, third position? And how much loan to value is your loan going to be? So for all you know, the house is worth 100K and there's a mortgage of 100K, you're giving them 30K. Okay? Basically, it's unsecured. Even though it's registered a lien on the house, the money there is over and above the value of the property. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah, we'd want to know that. We definitely want to know that. We'd want to know the loan to value on the property and what position we're in. And for all we know, there's 4 mortgages on this house, and you're going in 5th position, which means 4 other people are going to be paid before you get paid. Yep. So just these are the questions we got to ask. These are the questions we want to ask. We want to see because basically you're giving him a second mortgage on his house. You're giving him a loan with security, but it's not a mortgage in the sense that there's no amortization schedule, there's no payments actually. It's just a loan there's going to be a registered lien against the house. But you need to know that your loan puts you in a certain position, and that it can't be encumbered. That position cannot be, you're second, solely second, if you're second or first or whatever you are, that nobody else can be in the same position as you. And this is why we want lawyers involved in these agreements. Well, Keith, if you're putting it against the new build, I would want then really you won't have security because there's nothing there. You could maybe secure it against the land. When does it get uncomfortable if we are too low before getting paid? Too low before we're getting paid. Well, it's a question of risk, right? Measuring the risk. So, Frank, if you're in 3rd or 4th position, that means you're the 3rd or 4th to be paid. But really, it's the loan itself. So, to give you an example, right? If we have, so the house is 100K, have one loan for 50K. This is in first. We have another for 10K in second. We have another for 10K in third. And 70. And you're here in fourth position. If you're in fourth position, you're still below the 80%. Everybody see that? We're still below the 80%, 80% or lower. So what it means is all these people are going to be paid in a foreclosure or a sale before you are. You see, Frank? So it's not just position, it's loan to value. Now, if this loan here, say you were the fifth, and your 10K was here, and you're in fifth position. Well, here I might take 12%, but here I might want 16%. Now I'm no longer 80%. You see where I'm coming from? So it's a combination of position, and these positions, you want to make sure these positions cannot be added to. Like there can't be another person put in second, and it'll really push you down here. Everybody understand? So there could be another new loan for $50,000 in second position, right? And now it's going to push, this is going to be 60, and it's going to push everybody down. Well, this is why we have agreements and contracts. So you would want to see it's just like a title search. You'd want to run a title search on the property. Well, no, not if your contract doesn't stipulate that, nobody else can be put in front of you or no additional debt can be encumbering the property, for third position. You want your agreements to be ironclad. Ironclad in the sense that what you think you're getting, you're getting. So ultimately, I would want a lawyer to review that. I just want to make sure that they couldn't add debt to the property. So going back to Keith's situation, if Keith just registers a lien on the property, and there's not a declared position of the loan, and those liens will be paid out in the sale, or you got to know that you're going to get paid when you think you're going to get paid. Because you're declaring position, because in the case of sale or in the case of foreclosure, when do I get paid? This is the question we're asking. That's where the security lies. So there's a demand on sale, which is basically the loan's demand on sale. It means that the loan gets paid out on sale. This is what banks have on their agreements, right? So a bank says, look, I'm going to lend you money. You got to remember that the bank doesn't own your property, nor do they wish to own your property. So the bank gives you a loan, and they register a lien against the property. Okay, so when you get a loan for a mortgage, it's just a loan, but it's registered against the property, and there's a payment schedule, which is the amortization and the mortgage itself, right? So the mortgage is just the payment plan. That loan is registered against the property. It doesn't mean the bank owns your property. It just means that the loan, if not paid, will be secured and liquidated through the property to recover the investment. Does everybody understand that? Banks don't own your properties. They're not on the deed. So you own your property. The bank gives you a loan and registers against the property. That's the security for the property. And in their agreement, it says we're in first position. We're in first position, and we can't. And if this property gets sold, we get our payment immediately. Otherwise, if that wasn't in the contract, you could sell your house and still carry the mortgage with the bank. Does everybody understand that? Does that make sense? So remember, the bank doesn't own your property. They don't want your property. They're in the game of lending money. So they give you a loan. They register it against the property as first position. And then there's a demand on sale clause, which says if the property goes into foreclosure, if we don't get our money, then we can liquidate the property to get our money. If the property gets sold, we get paid immediately. That's the agreement the bank's making with you, saying we'll give you the money, We'll give you the money, but they don't own your house. And how can we sell the house and still carry the mortgage? Do the banks allow us to do that? No, they don't. That's the demand on sale clause, which basically says you have to pay me back if you sell the house. Because for the bank, that's the security. Now, a bank will let you port a mortgage, which is keep the mortgage and put it onto a new house. But you got to remember, the reason the bank's giving you a mortgage at that particular rate is because it's secured with real estate. Because if you sell the house, then the security for the bank is gone. Does that make sense? If you get rid of that property, what's their security? They have no security anymore. And obviously, there's a different rate for secured loan versus non-secured loans. So the risk to the lender is related to how are they going to get their money back? What's in place, and what happens if things go wrong? Or what happens if the property, the security itself gets sold? That's what the lender wants to know, right? So again, the lenders don't own your property. They don't own the house. It's like when the bank gives you a loan for a car, the car is in your name. They don't own the car. They don't want to own the car. But in the case of non-payment, they have the right to take, action, whatever action's in that agreement. So the lenders, you're not renting to own, where if you're renting to own, then they would own the house and you would rent it until you owned it. In this case, these are just lenders with security, and the security is the property. Does that make sense? So going back to Keith about your loan, you'd want to know if you're lending against the property, you'd want to know the details about the property. How much equity is in the property, what position you're going to be in. And if you're lending against the build, well, then you have no security unless you register it against the land as security, which is relatively liquid, to tell you the truth. You have to be careful about that. And if I was securing it against a pre-build, I'd want a higher return. You see what I'm saying? Because land on its own is nice, but it's not as valuable as, something on the land, which is what they're trying to do. But if you're lending money, it's not, again, it's not necessarily there's good loans and bad loans, but there are loans, you have to measure the risk, and you want to be paid for the appropriate risk that you're taking. And, with no security, who could tell me what interest rates are against no security loans? Who can tell me? Anybody? Unsecured debt, what kind of range are we talking? Yep, 25, could be 25, could be 30. Yep. Yeah, it could be, yeah. I mean, it's unsecured. Remember, it's unsecured. So when an unsecured loan is issued, what is the lender trying to do? Well, the lender's looking at it and saying, okay, as an example, and this is raw, this is not precise, but if I lend you 100K, I'm charging you 25% interest. It's going to be more than 4 years, but in 4 years, I get my money back. You see? So I'm out. I'm trying to get my risk off the table. And if I have no security, then I'm going to try to get my money back via interest as quickly as possible to take the risk off. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. So and these rates are going to change based on bank rates or mortgage rates. And the reason, if as an example, and I've done this before, I'll do it again. Give you an example that in the 80s, early 80s, interest rates, mortgage rates, I think it was 22%. That was the bank rate for mortgages in the 80s, early 80s. So if that was the mortgage rate, what could we expect, say, hard money at? Well, hard money could be 30%. Credit cards could be 36%. This is all being driven by inflation. And the reason is because even though you're getting 22%, that's not the buying power of the property. Yeah, absolutely. People lose their mind about interest rates going up a quarter point now, and because they have no memory, unless you're older, they have no memory of interest rates in the 80s were in double digits, basically. You know, if you got a 14 or even 12% interest rate on your mortgage, that was considered great. Now, when we see interest rates, mortgages go up, what do we see property values do? Go down. It's down, because somebody can only afford what they can afford. They can only afford what they can afford. So if the mortgage, you know, and this we talked about this before, the way to you know, increase the value of property is to extend the amortization, to drop the payment by extending the amortization, or drop interest rates. Either way, that's going to create more money at the end of the month for someone to buy more house. But it's the same house. These days, interest rates are going lower again. We are pretty lucky. I mean, yeah, interest rates, I mean, historically low for sure. Will they continue to go lower? I don't know. No one can say for sure, but definitely there's not a lot of motivation. Motivation is probably not the best word. They would like interest rates to come up, and the reason they'd like interest rates to come up is because, you know, if you're a saver and you put money in GICs and your, you know, low risk, you know, bonds, you know, if the interest rates are low, you're not making a lot on your money. And that's really bad for savers. When interest rates are low, it's really bad for savers because, you know, inflation is deteriorating their investment, as well as the low rates that are being offered for their money, like a GIC. So they'd like interest rates to come up, you know, a little bit. It'd be nice for them to come up a little bit for the economy. They believe that would be healthy for the economy, and they do it to cool the economy when it's too hot. But typically, in this environment right now, doesn't look like there's a lot of upside motivation for the government to increase, the Bank of Canada increase interest rates more specifically. But we'll see. I mean, things change. It started to go up, and now it's going down again. Well, that depends. We'll see what happens with the economy. But the world economy has slowed down, so that affects everybody. We're a global village now, and you know, it wouldn't shock me to see interest rates stay or even go down a little bit. That wouldn't be crazy at all. So if the equity is personal home to cover my investment of $30,000, is it good? Well, again, Keith, we'd want to know what the particulars of that are, right? What position are you being put in, and how much equity is in the house, right? Those are the questions we want to ask. Yeah. And really, and the big thing is knowing all that stuff, of course, but knowing what happens if things go wrong. That's what you really want to know. What if things go wrong? Elections are coming in the U.S. It's a big deal. I expect lower rates starting soon. Yeah, maybe, John. That's possible. I mean, this is it. I mean, those things are going to happen regardless of what we do, what we want to do, and this is why it's so important for us to run numbers. We want to ensure that the numbers show profit for us, regardless of the interest rate and what's going on. We'd want to know, you know, if we were protected, obviously, and we're getting the appropriate return for the risk that we're taking. So we'll have to see what happens. But I mean, it's hard to say. It's hard to predict. That's why I'd rather, you know, deal by deal, take in the numbers, run the numbers, and see if they're good. So Keith, just to follow up, find out what, you know, if it's going to be the house, what position and what equities in the house, and what, you know, how you're going to be protected, and then you can figure out an interest rate. You can follow up with the group next week with that. Okay, and Frank, you're good with your question, yes? You're going to find that out too, right? What type of clients would you approve to lend your money? Newcomer with no credit, self-employed. I believe, Frank, it's a combination of things, right? You'd have to look at their ability to pay it back. You know, if you're giving somebody a loan that has no income, then that could be a problem. Yes. So, you know, it's like a bank. You got to think of yourself as a bank. How would a bank, or what would a bank do to ensure that they were going to get paid back, right? So, you know, again, what's my security? Relative interest rate to the risk I'm taking, and the ability to pay back is very, very important. That's why banks want to know your income, right? They want to know your income and credit. They want to know how you manage debt. You know, these are normal things that a lender would examine. Now, a hard money lender is a little bit different because they're looking at the value of the property and only the property, and they're going to ask for a higher interest rate. And they know that if they liquidate the property, typically they're going to get their money back with a little extra. So again, it's getting the right return for the right risk that you're taking is really what it comes down to. How do you arrange purchases at distance? Do you always see the property? How do you arrange maintenance? So, Vincent, that's a great question. You can absolutely, buy properties in different areas, sight unseen. I've done it. Uh, you know, you just want to ensure that the vetting process is done by professionals. So you want to make sure that there's a property inspection. You want to know, I mean, Google Maps and the internet's changed everything. You can see the neighborhood, you can see the houses beside your house, but you definitely want someone on the ground there reviewing and looking at those things. In the way of property management, um, you know, the maintenance, everything done, you'd want to make sure that you work with someone. Either it's nice when someone gives you a reference, another student, another friend, somebody from the area gives you a reference. If not, you can do the vetting process, obviously, over the phone or Skype. There's lots of ways to do it. The world's changed quite a bit to allow us to do those kind of things. And if you really feel like you need to, if it's a big deal and you do a business trip down there and you make sure that the deal's real, right? That it's everything you think it is. But really, a lot of that stuff can be done by satellite. You don't really need to be there, but you need to make sure that whoever's vetting the property for you, Vincent, is legitimate, and because they're the ones who are actually telling you that the property is real. So Sam, is that good, Vincent? I'm protected well enough. Okay, good. Enough as per your comments. Would it be a good investment? Well, yeah, I mean, Keith, ultimately, after you know you're protected and you're looking at the interest rate and the return, I mean, ultimately you make that decision, right? But you can look at the market itself, and the market will tell you if you're getting the right return for the right risk. So a property like a bank would give you a mortgage. Say if you went and refinanced the mortgage, they would give you 80%. If you're getting a first-time home buyers, yeah, 95%, but that's insured, and the bank's doing that because as a mandate for their business. Ultimately, if you went and got an investment property, Keith, you'd only get 80%. So, the banks and the institutions are going to pay, based on the risk that they take. If you're giving somebody private money, remember this: if someone's asking you for private money, you have to ask the reason why. It's not a terrible question. Why not go to a regular institution? What's the challenge with going to a regular institution for you? And it's not to kill the loan. It's just to understand what's prohibiting them from getting a lower interest rate. Okay, so look at time today by if you find the owner of the property. Okay, so let's see. Sam, I just sent you one property to look at. We have time today. By the way, how do you find the owner of a property? Well, title search would be the easiest way, Michael. You can just run a title search on it. Which owns the property? My question is for a title search. Yep, title search. Yep. My question is for the expense, both. Yep, you can go online and get it. There's a cost to it, or you can ask your lawyer, or people. There's people that do title searches. When you buy a house, they do title searches. They're checking the title to make sure it's clean. So you're the owner, and there's nothing encumbering the property that you should know about that was not originally told. My question is for the expense portion of running the numbers. If you find these numbers, would you ask the seller of the property, and what is the expenses were like? Yes. So you'd ask the seller to give you that information. Let me look at. Give me 1 second. See if I can run that property. So let's just send me a property. Okay, give me 1 second. Okay. Okay, it's not in the sheet. I see. Am I correct? Give me one second. Let's see if we can get this done. Okay. It just costs about $50. You can do it easily online. Good. Yep, that's right. That's good. Thanks, Mom. Um. Uh. So let's look. It's only $10 in Alberta. Eh? That's pretty good. Sometimes it's the name of a corp, though. Yeah, if it's the name of a corp, yeah, you gotta do some digging. But I mean, that's why people create those corporations to protect themselves. Okay, so I'm gonna run the numbers on this property. Let me see if I can get this here. Let's see. Okay. Give me one second. I'm gonna run the property here. So hold up for questions. 7463.56. I'm just putting these numbers in. Water and sewer. Our sewer is 10340. Hydro 30. So hydro 3083.64. Insurance is 3608.64. Propane. Gas. Propane. The propane is 2851.96. Give me one second, folks. And that 18,042.70. So that's right. 5. Okay, let me share my screen now. Give me one second. Let me put in this. Number one, these are yearlies, I assume, yes? That's 10,000, 14,000. Oh, 75.6 is what they're saying they're bringing in for gross rents. That's pretty good. Let's see. Okay, so that is gross rents of 75, 600. Okay, that's 6,300. 6,300. All right. Okay. Let me do this. All right. This is the prop we're looking at. He's asking 850,000. Okay. Any repairs needed? Okay. Any repairs needed? He did the repairs. Okay. All right. So 850,000. So, oh, there's your cap rate, 5%. So, what do you think about that cap rate of 5%? That's not a lot to work with, for sure. How many units is it? It's one, two, three, four, two bottom apartments, 5, 6 units. Is that right? It's 2 bottom apartments. So apartment 1, apartment 2, apartment 3 says 2 bottom apartments, and shop. So 6 units in total, right? No shop and 4 residents. Is that what you mean that's being occupied now, or? So only 4 of the 6 units are being occupied? Is that what you're saying? So only 4 of 6, yes? Nobody in the shop and nobody in there. So the 6 units. So this is actually fully, when it's fully occupied. Right now you're only bringing in 4 units of the 6, correct? 5 units in total. Why does it say 2 bottom apartments? Because that's second bottom apartment. Is that what that means? Second apartment? Okay, 5. Okay, sorry, we can use 5. Plus 5 in total, including the shop, yes? Is that right? 2 included, 2, so 4 units, the shop is not occupied. My apologies. You were right, we finished the new one. 6 units. Okay, no worries. So 6 units and 4 are occupied, correct? Okay. All right. So really, you're not bringing in $6,300 a month. They're all occupied. The shop's occupied too? Okay. So they're all occupied. This is what your cap rate is. It's 5%. That doesn't leave you a lot to work with, unfortunately. So, what do you mean? Still low. The cap rate's 5. That's pretty low. So to give you an example, if low cap, yeah. So the challenges we might run into, okay, if we get a finance mortgage, will he do seller financing? He'll do seller financing. How much seller financing will he do? To a limit. Do you know what the limit is? Not much? But you don't know what it is? Not sure yet? Okay. So let's say it's 10%. Okay, and you put up 20%. Okay? And if he does a 30-year mortgage, he doesn't want to be the bank. Okay. Is that zero interest? Is that what you're telling me? Or is that a zero? Is that, oh, okay. I see what that is. Okay, I got you. No worries. Okay. Say we pay him 6% because he wants to sell. Bank's giving us, might say 15-year mortgage, and it might be half because it's a commercial property. So you can see that the numbers are pretty bad. On that, you'll lose about $17,000 a year. That structure, all right? If we could get somehow residential on it, and he put up 10 and you put up 10, it would help us. Still taking a loss on the property. Well, see this. If we get a 30-year mortgage, maybe we get a lender to give us 30. Losing about $4,000. Can you really get 15-year commercial? Can you really get 15-year commercial? What do you mean by that? Do you mean they'll only give you 15 years? I usually told 10 is max for commercial. No, that depends on the lender, Michael. Is your mortgage broker saying he can only give you 10? Have you talked to a mortgage broker about that? My broker. Not broker yet. Okay, no worries. Talk to a broker. Different lenders will do different things, right? Different lenders will do different things. So this property, unfortunately, is going to be really tough cash flow, and that's because income versus the price, it's not enough there. With monthly gross rent, I want to see around 8,500. Uh, that would make it work. But right now we're not at 8,500. 1%. You're breaking. Oh, what's your exact expense? Well, the exact expense is 18,042. That's the exact expense that you gave me. The additional 20% is from this right here. The vacancy, maintenance, and property management, which I didn't see in his numbers. He didn't give you those numbers, correct? Not that I see. So I'm going to make the assumption that vacancy, property management, and maintenance are going to cost you 20% of the gross. So we're looking at expenses 42,000, which leaves you, 35,000. Sorry, 32,000. I mean, something 33,000 is what it's going to leave you. So the problem we have here is that the it's only giving you a 5% return. So if you pay cash for this house, you get a 5% return. To me, that's not worth the risk. And if I add financing to this, it's way too tight. Think about it. If you're only making 5% on the money, how are you going to add financing at 4.5 or 3.5? Like maybe you can get a 3.5. Still, I mean, you need like a 3 work. No, even a 3 wouldn't work. 2.5. No, this thing would be very, very tough to make work because ultimately it still doesn't work. Ultimately, the cap rate is too low. The price is too high relative to the income. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's the problem. I mean, and I just want to make something clear. The price really doesn't matter to us, right? It doesn't really matter to us. Income that matters to us. So let's say that the price was, the market says that this price should be 500,000. Okay, and I'm paying 600,000. I really wouldn't care. You see what I'm saying? It's the income that decides, if this is a good value or not. Well, if you were negotiating this, to get to a decent, I mean maybe 7. Let me see. It's pretty low. I'd have to go over here. Sorry. Yeah, it's the same. That would be too tight too. I'd probably say 700. There are no repairs. Oh, messed that up. Purchase price, give me 1 second. What's this? Because I went, by accident. There we go. ARV is the actual repair value. So if I did 700,000, here. If you're a 6.1, your work mortgage like a conventional. Let's do 10 and 15, 25, and let's say 15-year mortgage, 4, and each 5%. No, still doesn't work. You probably are looking more at 650. No, 650 wouldn't work either. See how low we're going? This is crazy. If we were doing conventional, mortgage, yeah, this isn't gonna work. I mean, there's no way this guy's gonna drop. Well, it's possible, I guess, but the idea of him dropping his sell price to 550 or something like that, it would just be too much to ask. Must be very high appreciation market, maybe. Your ARV is still showing 750. Yeah, it's not grabbing the ARV, the cap. It's not grabbing it. It's grabbing this number here, the 600,000. It's grabbing that. So it's the reason is this here. If I go 600,000, there we go. See, that's why. But it was grabbing the number because that's what we're going to mortgage, right? So I tell you, there's not a lot of room in that one for profit. Not a lot of room. Yeah. No worries. What we do, we run the numbers. And if it doesn't work, that's just the way it is, and we move on to the next property. But asking this person to go lower than that, I think, would be a big challenge to drop. To make it work for us, it would be hundreds of thousands of dollars in a drop. This guy probably has very little mortgage on this property and does the management himself. And he's not accounting for maintenance, or he's not accounting for vacancy. That's what he's doing, eh? That's not good. That's not good. I don't understand completely the motivation for people to invest in property with returns of 3, 4, 5%, unless they believe the property is just going to increase massively in value to overcome, what they're giving up in opportunity, investing at a higher rate. So, okay, folks, we are at the end of our session tonight. Is there any questions before we finish? Someone asked earlier, I just want to remember, the question was, how do I find the numbers for properties? If it's a realtor listed property, just ask the realtor to ask for the numbers from the seller. Send them an email. Just looking for the income and expense sheet. Income and expense sheet is what we're looking for, and then we can input those numbers appropriately in the sheet to give us an appropriate view of the value of the property and the profitability of it for us. Okay? Any questions? Anybody else before we wrap up? Income and expense sheet. Yep. Income and expense sheet. Always income and expense sheet. Yeah. Does it make sense to wholesale when there are agents involved? Is it common? You can, Mona. You can do that. Typically, the agents don't like wholesaling, but there has to be. And typically, the realtors are going to do retail properties as their main type of selling property. So there's not a lot of room to do a wholesale deal, but not always. You could find them, but when you think about it, right, you're asking, how much of a discount can you get so you can actually wholesale it to the end user where they get benefit too. Does that make sense, Nona? So it can happen. Obviously, anything can happen, but it's tougher with realtors because they're dealing with retail properties. Okay, folks, we are wrapping up tonight. If you're good, just type in yes or Y. Good stuff. All right, folks, thanks for everybody coming, and we will see you all next Tuesday. Send me any deals you want me to review. I'm glad to do it. We all learn from the experience. Everybody have a great week, and we'll see you next week.